So there's a couple different objectives with the game because there are 2 different game pieces, and they do vary by quite a lot, but basically pick them up, place them. Actually, the algae, there's a slightly different objective to that, but this is game piece number 1. This is the coral. It is 4 inches in diameter, 12 inches long. So there's branches on the reef that these have to be placed on for points. But if they're on the reef and they're touching the algae, big ball, if they're touching this on the reef, then I think their points get negated. So that's also kind of another objective, is removing these from the reef and then scoring them in the net above the barge. The challenge associated with each of these is that they're just so very different from each other. This one's bouncy, it's huge, it's compliant, and it's fully symmetrical. Whereas this guy, rigid, has a through hole, which is what you're scoring with, but is also another opportunity to maybe grip it from the inside or do something different with that. Making a manipulator to suit both of these, I think, is going to be a huge challenge, which is already something that we've overcome. We're contemplating just having 2 totally different systems to handle both of them. And then even taking that a step further, looking at the ground intake. Ground intake for something like this is a pretty classical game piece. Deep Space had this where it was a slightly smaller ball, but similar in like bounciness and nature. So, wheeled intake is pretty basic to do. But for something like this, picking this up off the ground, there's so many different orientations it could be in, and there's a specific orientation it has to be in to score on the branches. The symmetry and how drastically different these are. If the game was only one of these, it'd be a lot simpler, but both the objectives are pretty closely tied to manipulating both of them successfully. So I think that's a big challenge.
At the beginning of the first day of Ri3D, we will all head to the wind tunnel and watch the kickoff stream. And from the kickoff stream, we're able to get a sense of what the robot needs to accomplish within this Ri3D season. And from there, we will review the game manual to go over rules and dimensions for the robot so we know the building specifications. The next part of the design process is to choose a concept. So each group of students will begin to draw their own concepts of how the robot should be in the different systems. From there, we vote on which design we believe to be the most feasible. I think one of the most important parts about Ri3D is making sure that when we make our robot, we do not want to make the design too complex for high school students. We want to keep it fairly simple. It also helps save on parts and materials. Once we've selected a design concept, we will begin prototyping to get an idea of the sizes and lengths of like the different limbs, for example, in this case. So we would use a CAD program, SolidWorks, to design the parts. And from there, we would hand the drawings off of those parts to the machine shop, where they'd be manufactured into tangible parts in real life. So for tomorrow's second day of the Ri3D event, the design team and I are hoping to finish prototyping first of all, making sure that any concepts that we were considering for the robot are feasible and functional. Once we finish prototyping, we also hope to finish the entirety of the robot CAD, so all the SolidWorks parts. They should be fully designed. And once we have those designs, we're going to create drawings from them and hand those off to the ACE manufacturing team, who will create the parts for us.
So as a first alumni, I've had a lot of experience with various different challenges. And I remember my first year was in 2023, and it was 2 different pieces. And we had to attack that 2 different ways. And I think that that's very similar with this challenge. There's also 2 pieces. So for this season, so far we've done an arm, we're debating about an arm or an elevator. We also are talking about how we're orienting the coral. We are thinking about an intake that would be like many of the 2019 bots, where there is upper rollers and lower rollers. These would be good for the algae, and this intake would be on a double jointed arm, and you can iterate with that. We're still deciding what we want to do, but these are the strongest concepts I think would work. There are so many different solutions that can be for this challenge, but the most important ones would be the most simple ones, because then you can start designing for failure and design for what resources you have.